Okay, so...
Better than the cartoons.
So this presentation, I've worked on it since like 10 p.m. on Wednesday, I believe, just non-stop. And I made it a lot longer than I originally thought I was going to. Talking at normal speed through it takes like an hour and a half without questions, so I'm going to be talking really fast. So, excuse that.
Leave your questions.
Let's get started, and I need leave your questions at the door. And I needed to like study a bunch of new stuff that I didn't know before, so forgive me if I occasionally have to look at the slides because I started this on Wednesday and it's Friday today. So first of all, talking about the origin of Pokemon, we need to start talking about Satoshi Tajiri. So as a young boy, he was an insect collector. That was a good hobby of his. He was also really fascinated with video games. Like, he'd be skipping classes in high school to play games, and he actually failed high school because of it. He needed to go take up makeup classes later to actually graduate high school. But yeah, he took apart like his game systems to figure out how they work and such. And because he was a big fan of games, he started writing and editing this magazine called Game Freak from 1981 to 1986, and those were illustrated by Ken Sugimori, which is a name that becomes more important later. So while they were doing this, they decided, like, wow, games are really lacking quality. Let's make our own. So they became a game creation company instead of a magazine company in 1989. And Tajiri had the idea of a Pokemon in 1990 when he saw the Game Boy over here, the handheld device that Nintendo had at the time that you put batteries in and it was black and white. How there was, yeah.
I also have one. A lot of money.
He saw how there was like a link cable where you could put two different ones together to interact with each other, and he envisioned the insects that he collected as a kid like crawling across the cable from one console to the other. So that's where he had the idea for Pokemon trading and the idea for Pokemon. So he pitched the idea to Nintendo, and Shigeru Miyamoto over here, who invented Mario and the Legend of Zelda, he really liked the idea. So he started mentoring Tajiri. So Game Freak started production on Pokemon Red and Green, which took 6 years. The project nearly bankrupted Game Freak. They lost 5 employees along the way, and Tajiri himself didn't take a salary to work on it. They also worked on a couple Mario spin-off games for Nintendo to help fund their Pokemon game. And the Game Boy had been out for a while, so they didn't really think it'd sell that well, but it quickly became one of Nintendo's top-selling franchises. And part of that is because of Mew. Tajiri snuck in Mew to the code a couple weeks before production ended, without Nintendo knowing. And when people heard about Mew and Mew being in the game, Nintendo was like, oh, I guess this is part of the game, so let's distribute Mews where you can come in and we'll give you a Mew, and that really increased popularity. And it's possible that without Mew, Pokemon might not even exist today.
I have a Mew.
Dang it! So now we start out with Generation 1 in 1996 with the original 151 Pokemon. So starting out with Pokemon Red, Green, and Blue. It's complicated. So Pokemon Red and Green came out in 1996 in Japan, and then Blue came out later, and in North America they only released Red and Blue in 1998. So that's why that's complicated. So that introduced the original 151 Pokemon. Now Ken Sugimori, who was the illustrator of the Game Freak magazine, he drew and finalized all 151 Pokemon. So, Pokemon was unique as an RPG in the sense that it toned down violence. It was meant more for kids. So instead of like dying, the Pokemon would faint if their HP ran out. It had a turn-based battle system where it's like you choose your action, your opponent chooses their action, and whoever has the higher speed stat goes first. That turn goes by, and then just keep going until one of them is defeated is how the battle system works. So there's 3 starter Pokemon, so at the beginning of your adventure you choose either Charmander, Squirtle, or Bulbasaur. You can capture more Pokemon along the way. You have a rival that chooses whatever Pokemon has a type advantage against yours. Now what really made Pokemon unique was trading. Like other games on the Game Boy, you could connect to each other and like do verses against each other, and you can for this as well. But this was like the first real major case where people could cooperate with each other. These different versions, they had different Pokemon that were obtainable. So if you were playing Red version, let's say you couldn't catch a Bellsprout, but those were catchable in Blue version. I'm making that up, I don't know if that's true. But you would have to find a friend who would have Blue version and trade with them, and you could trade something to them that you can get in your game that they can't get. So to actually catch them all and get all 151 Pokemon, you would have to cooperate with people, or just buy 2 Game Boys and 2 of the different games. But no, it's meant to encourage cooperation, people working together with each other and meeting new people. So how these games work and how they continue to work for a long time is you have to go and defeat 8 gyms, the gym leaders there around the region, where after you defeat them you get a gym badge. After you get all 8, you can go challenge the Pokemon League, which features the Elite Four and the champion, and when you beat the champion, you beat the game. So,
Whoa.
So this takes place in the Kanto region, which is based on a real region in Japan. The main antagonists of the game are Team Rocket, which is led by Giovanni, and Team Rocket is just this criminal organization that steals Pokemon and sells them or exploits them any way to make a profit. And throughout the game, you're like defeating them and interfering with their plans. And the 8th gym leader is actually Giovanni himself. So it's after you defeat him and get your final badge from him that he decides he didn't utilize his men well enough in Team Rocket. He was kind of taken down by this kid and your rival. And he disbands Team Rocket and he sets off, and he vows that one day he'll reform Team Rocket stronger than ever. And for those of you who play Pokemon Go and were wondering where Mewtwo came from, is Team Rocket found genetic traces of Mew and tried to clone Mew and make the world's most powerful Pokemon. So not only did they clone Mew, but they gave it a bunch of enhancements to make it very powerful. So Mewtwo was born in a lab, and when Mewtwo learned that it was meant to be nothing more than a lab rat, it destroyed the lab that it was in and escaped. And it was never seen by Team Rocket ever again. In the games, it escaped to Cerulean Cave, where you can find it and capture it.
That's awesome.
Now, the Pokemon trading card game, that also started in 1996, which is collectible tradable cards where you can battle other people's decks, and there's still tournaments to this day, like it's still really relevant. Like I used to collect Pokemon cards, and I personally think the game's really fun. I really enjoyed it. Now, I do have a binder of Pokemon cards somewhere deep in my closet, but that's gonna take way too long to find. So here's cards that were easier for me to find, and these are all German. so you can feel free to pass these around, but they're German, so there's German Pokemon cards that I got in Germany. So,
oh, I recognize him.
so then there's the Pokemon anime. This is probably what Pokemon's most famous for. Where people think of Pokemon, they think of Ash and Pikachu. So this started in 1997. It features Ash and his partner Pikachu, where Ash turns 10 years old. He sets out to go get his starter Pokemon, Charmander, Bulbasaur, or Squirtle. All of them are taken, and all that's left is a Pikachu that listens to nobody, especially not him. But he takes it anyway. He like pulls it on a leash at first. But through some tough experiences, they become basically best of friends, and the show has gotten to where it is today. His partner was originally going to be a Clefairy, interestingly enough, which would have been very weird. But yeah, the show also featured Team Rocket, yet unlike the games, they aren't really a real threat. They're just kind of cartoony kids show villains that are defeated about every episode. They saw Pikachu's power and are convinced that his Pikachu is like the most powerful Pikachu that ever has existed, so they're intent on catching it. And they spend all their money to do so, and they usually can't eat because of that, and I feel really bad for them. But yeah, the TV show is currently airing in 98 countries. There's currently over 1,000 episodes. You can tell that this presentation is really up to date because episode 1001 just aired in the US like last week. There's currently 6 series, but it's still just the same thing, one leading into the next about Ash. It's on season 22 right now, and it spawned several movies, with the first movie being Mewtwo Strikes Back in 1998. There's currently 20 movies that exist, and the next one is actually coming out July 13th of this year. Now the next game that they released was Pokemon Yellow Special Pikachu Edition, which came out in 1998 or 1999 in North America. Now this was basically red, blue, and green, but with Pikachu as your starter Pokemon. It's based on the anime, basically, after the TV show gains in popularity. So just like the TV show, you have a Pikachu, you always have to have Pikachu with you, it follows you around, you can never evolve it. And the Game Boy Color was out by this time, so they did have some scenes in color, like with Surfing Pikachu over here. And at the time, that became the fastest selling handheld title in history. Then a couple spin-offs. You got Pokemon Stadium that came out on the Nintendo 64, Nintendo's home console at the time, in 1998. So, because it was on the home console, the N64, it was in 3D, and people were like, whoa, Pokemon's on my TV, and it's in color, and it's in 3D. So people really like that. But it didn't really have any story to it, it's just defeat traders at the stadium, and that's it. But people still thought it was really cool. And then there's Smash Bros. That came out in 1999, which was Nintendo's unique fighting game where you try to knock your opponents off the screen. And it had 12 characters total, and the 2 Pokemon that it had in it was Pikachu and Jigglypuff. Pikachu makes sense. Jigglypuff might make you wonder, like, what the heck, why is Jigglypuff in their fighting game? That's because Jigglypuff actually had a place in the anime as a recurring character, so she was semi-popular. And it was hard to program brand new characters, and Jigglypuff looks really similar to Kirby. So they were just able to take Kirby, make Kirby look a little bit different, and bam, Jigglypuff. So that's why Jigglypuff is in Smash Bros. Easy to program. Now we move on to Generation 2, which started in 1999. Now we're at 251 total Pokemon. It added 100 new Pokemon. So new generation means new starters. So the starters of this generation, why is there a cursor right there? This Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile right there. So we have Pokemon Gold and Silver, which came out on the Game Boy Color, which is the sequel to Red, Blue, and Green. So with it being in color, they decided to add shiny Pokemon, where whenever you encounter a Pokemon, it has a 1 in 8,192 chance of being shiny, just meaning that it's colored differently.
Oh my god.
It added some new mechanics like Steel and Dark types were new types that they added. They added Pokemon breeding, where you could leave 2 Pokemon at a daycare and you could get an egg from there later. It was.
See? Did you see?
It was in the Johto region, which is another region based on a real area in Japan, that featured the legendaries Ho and Lugia, as well as the legendary dog trio Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. They added another mythical event-only legendary like Mew, which was Celebi, so you can't get it anywhere in the game. You have to go to like a store during these times for them to put a Mew on your game. It featured the return of Team Rocket, but without Giovanni. It was a bunch of admins from Team Rocket and grunts that formed together and wanted to keep Team Rocket going. The big climax of the game is at this radio tower where they call across the whole region like, Giovanni, come join us, but Giovanni never showed up, and you defeat them. So something that was really cool about these games is the Kanto region was also included. And the reason for that is because of this man here, Satoru Iwata. He was the president of Nintendo for several years, a very brilliant man. He was the one who invented the Wii. Like, he had a motto that, like, video games are meant to be one thing, fun. Fun for everyone. Which is why he invented the Wii, because that's accessible by everyone, really simple controls and such. But he was very smart when it came to programming. He created a program himself that was able to compress the code enough so that they would be able to fit the new region and the region from the first game all on the limited space of one of those cartridges. Like, the other developers couldn't figure out how to do it. It was just because of him that they were able to manage to do that. So because of that, instead of doing 8 gyms beating the league and it being over, it's now 8 gyms, beat the league, go to the other region, beat the 8 gyms there, do the league again, and yeah. So there was a lot to do in those games, and people really liked that. And because you could go to the first region, you could catch all the first 151 Pokemon as well.
So how long did it take you to win that, like to beat the gym?
The one gym? Well, it takes a while to get to it. There's a bunch of trainers
Like
battle on the
months
way.
or years or weeks or?
No, no.
You can do it right away?
I beat the remakes that came later in probably, I don't know, 50, 60 hours, something like that. I think. Now, this was intended as the finale to the Pokemon series. They didn't think it'd be popular enough, so these were meant to be the final games ever made for Pokemon, which is why the very final battle after you defeated the League for the second time is against Red, and Red is the name of the trainer from the original game, so he's the guy that you play as in the first game. So after you've beaten the League twice, you go to the top of the tallest mountain, and you find Red there waiting for you to challenge you. So you challenge him, he's considered the strongest trainer in the world. And overcoming him, it's like symbolic. It's like you're stronger than you were then because you're beating yourself from the first game. It's like you've become much greater than when you were then. And then Red disappears after you defeat. So it was a really cool ending to what was supposed to be the ending of the Pokemon series in total. And there was a third version that came out later, Crystal in 2000 or 2001 North America. And that featured Suicune. And I'm probably not talking fast enough, this presentation's pretty long. There was Stadium 2, which was like the same as Stadium 1, but with Gen 2 Pokemon. There was Smash Bros. Melee that came out in 2001, which was the next Smash Bros. Game where they included Mewtwo and Pichu as playable characters. It's still competitively played to this day as it's seen as the most competitive and technical Smash Bros. And I'm gonna stop talking about Smash Bros. From here on. This is the last one I'll cover, so I'll just say Pokemon continued to play a large part in further Smash games. And here's Melee that I got from Eevee Games one day way back when for 20 bucks. It's worth a lot more now. But moving on to Generation 3, which started in 2002. Now we're at 386 total Pokemon. It added 135 new Pokemon. So, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. This came out in 2002 or 2003 for North America. So this was on Nintendo's new handheld console, the Game Boy Advance. It had mixed reception when it first came out because some people were like, Gold and Silver were such beautiful finales, how dare you continue with Pokemon, the series should have ended right there. And the other people played it and were like, that's pretty fun. So this game took place in the Hoenn region, which once again is based on a real region in Japan. So, interestingly enough, there was still the slogan of gotta catch them all, but catching them all was literally impossible in these games. because with the Game Boy games, Game Boys could communicate with other Game Boys, but a Game Boy cannot communicate with a Game Boy Advance. So the only Pokemon that you could catch were the Generation 3 Pokemon and whatever Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon were available in Hoenn. So it was physically impossible to catch them all, interestingly enough. This game introduced double battles where it's like a 2v2 instead of a 1v1. The main legendaries were Groudon and Kyogre, which are the legendaries of the land and the ocean respectively. The main bad dudes are Team Aqua and Team Magma, where in Ruby version, Team Magma is trying to control Groudon to expand the landmass to make a more ideal world for humans. And in Sapphire version, Team Aqua is trying to control Kyogre to expand the oceans to make a more ideal world for Pokemon, because most of the life is in the ocean. And then, like, it's a really simple plot, it's just go beat the bad guys, really. It's not that complicated. And then there was a third version that came out later, Emerald, in 2004 or 2005 for North America, which featured Rayquaza as the main legendary. Rayquaza, it's pronounced one way. I pronounce it both, I switch both ways, they both sound right. With the Rayquaza being the legendary of the skies, and basically a babysitter for Groudon and Kyogre, because they like to fight a lot, and whenever they do, Rayquaza is supposed to swoop down and basically tell them, "Jump, go to your room," basically. That's what Rayquaza does, he breaks up fights between Kyogre and Groudon. So, just quickly here.
I recognize them.
Like, the plot of Sapphire in a nutshell. Everything going wrong, this is terrible, this isn't what I want at all, and then it's like, what the heck were you expecting? And then it's the leader of Team Aqua just thinking about riding on Kyogre like ocean pals, you know? Or like the two of these guys fighting and Rayquaza having to, you know, basically babysit them. Now, between the release of Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald was another title, and that was Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now, these were actually remakes of the original Red and Green versions, and they made these to make it possible to catch all the Generation 1 Pokemon again. So, you can see that there's a big graphical difference between the originals and the remakes here. And something new that they added in the remakes that wasn't in the originals was the Sevi Islands, which are these islands where you can catch several Generation 2 Pokemon, but not all of them. So it's still impossible to catch them all. Which is where we move in to a few spin-offs, which are Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, which came out on the GameCube, Nintendo's current home console at the time. So Colosseum came out in 2003, and Gale of Darkness came out in 2005. I have Colosseum there, I never actually played Gale of Darkness myself. But yeah, these were adventures on the GameCube, so you play it on the TV screen. They weren't main series, so you don't go around to gyms defeating gym leaders. They had their own unique stories. Now, Pokemon from these games can actually be sent to the Game Boy games, or the Game Boy Advance games. If you see on the front of that game case at the bottom right, it shows like a little image of connecting the GameCube with the Game Boy Advance. So you can send Pokemon to the Game Boy Advance. So catching them all became possible again, but it's very difficult. If you wanted to catch every Pokemon using just Generation 3 games, you have to 100% Gale of Darkness, meaning you need to catch every Pokemon in it. You need to do everything. And then your reward for that is Ho-Oh, and then you can send Ho-Oh to the Game Boy Advance games, and that's the last one that you need to catch them all in Gen 3. So it's stupidly difficult. Then there's Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team. Now, Blue Rescue Team on the Nintendo DS here was actually my first Pokemon game I ever played. I got it with my Nintendo DS. It came out on the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. It's the only two Pokemon titles released together that are on different consoles like that. And it's a spin-off game where you play as a human who's transformed into a Pokemon and has arrived in the Pokemon world. It's really interesting, it's very story-driven, and by the way, I should have mentioned before, the Pokemon you play as is based on a personality quiz at the beginning of the game, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a dungeon crawler, so you explore around randomly generated maps. And it's very story and music-driven. The music of this game is absolutely incredible, and the story is very well written. I don't have enough time to get into it, though, so I'll move on. So now we move into Generation 4, which came out in 2006, where the total is now at 493 Pokemon, and it added 107 new Pokemon. So to start out Generation, onward please. There we go, that took way longer than it should have. So first came out Diamond and Pearl in 2006, or 2007 for North America. Now, Pokemon Diamond version was actually my first main series Pokemon game. I don't actually know. I'm pretty sure I sold both Diamond and Pearl, but for some reason I still have the game cases there.
That's interesting.
Don't ask me why. But yeah, this was on Nintendo's new console, the DS. And the DS was capable of 3D graphics, so the Game Freak was like, do we make it 3D? But they figured, nah, let's just play it safe and keep it 2D for now. Now this had a touch screen, so instead of navigating menus to do all the actions in battle, you would instead tap the touch screen. So this was really cool and really helped people get into this. So the DS had wireless communication, so no longer did you have to connect consoles together with a link cable. You'd be able to wirelessly communicate like across the room or even over the internet. And people thought that was great. So this game took place in the Missingno region, which once again is a region based on a region in Japan. So the main legendaries of this game were Dialga and Palkia, which are the gods of time and space respectively. The main bad dudes are Team Galactic, who want to control either Dialga or Palkia depending on which game, to basically make them remake the universe in their image, I guess. So there were also Pokemon contests, which I won't get into, I don't have enough time. And they released an enhanced version, which was Pokemon Platinum later in 2008 or 2009 for North America, which featured the third legendary. Legendaries usually come in a trio like that, where it's like Groudon, Kyogre, Rayquaza, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, or Giratina is like the god of antimatter. And that game focuses on him.
Exactly. You don't have this guy?
That's Generation 4.
Yeah, he's coming.
Matter.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you have been looking forward to this slide. So, these are the new evolution and pre-evolutions that Generation 4 added. This slide took me the longest out of all of them to make. This took like 45 minutes. So
The Murkrow grows.
I listed all of them. That's 27 of them. So it shows on one side like the one thing, the arrow, what it evolves into. And if there's any items that are needed for evolution, it shows like the item that's needed for evolution. If it needs to know a move to evolve, then it shows a move there. It basically covers everything. Like Snorunt has to be female to evolve into Froslass, even list that. It's opposite for Curlia for Gallade.
No,
But yeah, if you guys want to come up here and take a picture of this, go ahead. That's what it's meant for. Yeah, I can. Sure,
We can just
silently.
we'll go back to that at the end.
That is
But yeah, there. Now, Generation 4 adds a lot of new evolutions and pre-evolutions, and then it just doesn't happen anymore for the generations, with an exception Generation 6 adding a new evolution for Eevee, but that's it. So Generation 4 is like the last one that does this,
When do we get
but
Generation?
it does a lot.
Summer sometime probably.
God, no. Please, God.
Now,
Give me another year.
now we move into very interesting titles here, which is Pokemon HeartGold and SoulSilver. So these were remakes of the original Pokemon Gold and Silver, like, if that wasn't obvious.
I know him.
And the purpose of these games was to make it possible to catch them all again within the actual games without going to like the GameCube and 100% in Gale of Darkness. So finally you can catch them all again using just the main games. It was great. So yeah, these were highly praised. A lot of people see them as the greatest Pokemon games ever made. I can see why. They have the most content out of any Pokemon games, I'd say. Like, just like the originals, it has both of the regions, so it has Kanto and Johto, so 16 badges to collect. It had a very unique feature that only appeared in this game, which is Pokemon walking with you. So whenever you... Huh?
Give me that. What did you do?
I was just saying I need to walk my Togepi.
Yeah, talking about walking...
Damn it! Sorry.
Yeah, talking about walking with Pokemon, that was actually a really unique feature to this game. Whichever Pokemon was first in your party, it would walk behind you, as you see in these images here, where like whenever you want, you can just turn around and talk to the Pokemon that's walking with you. People thought that this was a great mechanic, and it really made you feel a lot more connected to your Pokemon. It's only existed in these games. People have been asking for it back for a
I'm
long
having
time.
enough trouble walking a fish, so talking to it.
Now, they even took it a step further, which is why the game came in that big box there, which is the Pokewalker here. This right here was the original Pokemon Go, this tiny little device here that's just black and white and has 3 buttons on it. You would connect this to your DS, and you would send a Pokemon from your DS to the Pokewalker, and then you take it walking. Its pedometer, it measures your steps. You can play on this little screen here and catch Pokemon and get items, and then when you get home and back to your DS, you would connect it to your DS, and you would give the items and stuff that you got. People really like this. This is the only main Pokemon game that's done this kind of thing. This tiny little Pokeball thing here was the original Pokemon Go. Also, I forgot to pass this around. This is my original DS. It has Pokemon Platinum version in it. My A button's broken, so you can't actually get past the title screen, but you can watch the title screen, I guess. And here's the Pokewalker if you guys want to pass that
I
around.
wouldn't even know.
It does have a fresh battery in it, but don't ask me how the menus work because I don't remember. It's been too long. But I do remember taking that thing to school and having like a good time playing on that little screen there. But yeah, feel free to play around with the Pokewalker. I don't remember how it works. But yeah.
I didn't know it was going to come back on.
And yeah, with it being Gold and Silver remakes, it still has that like fateful encounter with Red on the top of Mount Silver and such.
Cool.
Now we have Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time, Darkness, and Sky. Now, this was a kind of 3-version thing, where Time and Darkness first in 2007, and Sky later as like the enhanced 3rd version thing. Now, Explorers of Sky was my favorite game of all time, up until December of last year when a game called Xenoblade Chronicles 2 stole my heart. But this is another Pokemon Mystery Dungeon spin-off,
I don't know how you get it going yet.
and there's a Pokewalker there in front of you too.
I saw that one.
So this is,
I need that.
what, the Pokewalker?
Well, if it can walk it without me walking, yes. Send my Pokemon out there walking. Why wouldn't I? Better than driving everywhere.
It's for the DS from 2010.
I
It doesn't
don't
work
care.
with
They should
Pokemon
make
Go.
one for now.
Dude, it's called your phone?
But
Is that Pokemon Go?
But yeah, so Explorers of Sky and Time and Darkness were like more Mystery Dungeon spin-offs where you play as a human who's transformed into a Pokemon. And it got mostly negative reviews by most major reviewers, which is a massive shame, like, because they only really seem to look at the gameplay, like, is the gameplay super engaging? No, bad game. So I hate a lot of major reviewers. Like, it's very much driven by story and music. If any of you have walked through the Health and Sciences station before and heard me playing the piano, it's probably been music from that game, honestly.
I did
So-
once, but I didn't recognize it.
There's probably music from that game.
Yeah, not the
way
one
made.
I know.
Now, it had some really major character development that wasn't seen in main series titles. Like in the regular main series titles, the main character never talks and it's just go and get badges, beat the bad guys. Whereas this game featured like insane character development and like real bonds between characters. It had a very mature plot and it had themes such as death in a Pokemon game. It was actual death. And it was highly praised by players as an incredible experience. It's about stopping the destruction of time and has some very heavy themes of sacrifice. Like, this is no exaggeration here, but this game, the story of it is better than any movie I've ever seen. It might be better than any book that I've ever read. And my life genuinely feels more fulfilled for having experienced this story. That's how much I like it.
Wow.
Like, I really recommend this game to like anyone that's ever willing to try. I love it that much. Now, going back to major reviewers hating it, let's talk about IGN really quickly as an example. Explorers of Sky, which was my favorite game of all time for a very long time, they gave it a 4.9 out of 10 because they said that it was like the same as Time and Darkness and the gameplay wasn't that engaging. Let's talk about another game that they reviewed. This one right here, Hell's Kitchen for the Nintendo DS. This is a game where you basically do diner dash on the bottom screen while Gordon Ramsay stares at you on the top screen and yells "fuck you" a lot. They gave this game a 5 out of 10, higher than this game. They thought that this was better than that. But yeah, I don't really have too much time to get into. I'm not gonna pass that around. But I don't really have time to get into like the complications of the story. If anyone does want to hear it later, I'll happily talk about it. I love speaking about that game so much. Now we get into Generation 5. This is where like main plots get complicated. I'm very slow. I need to be talking very fast. Anyway, Pokemon Black and White. This probably has the most mature main series Pokemon game story. So for the first time, Pokemon move in battle. The main legendaries over here, Reshiram and Zekrom, that's how they move in battle, for example. I used to have Black and White. Black's lent to a friend right now, so there was White. And yeah, it had the largest amount of Pokemon in this generation. Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. It has 649 Pokemon now. It introduced 156 new Pokemon. So that's the most that's ever been introduced in a generation. So in this game, you can only catch a new Pokemon until you've beaten the main story. A lot of people really hated that. Like, what? I can't go through the main story with all my old favorites? I actually liked that. It meant that every new encounter that I did was something that I've never seen before. But yeah, it was highly praised for a mature story, at least by me. But I'll skip TMs for now. There's the Unova region, which is not based on a place in Japan. This is based on New York.
I know that place. Thank God.
But yeah, so the main legendaries in this game are Reshiram and Zekrom, and their origin story is they used to be one Pokemon, and they used to serve these two brothers. And eventually the two brothers started fighting with each other. The older brother wanted to pursue truth, and the younger brother wanted to pursue ideals. So to side with both brothers, this legendary Pokemon split into two. Reshiram as the legendary of truth, and Zekrom for the legendary of ideals. So they each sided with different brothers. They fought against each other quite a bit, but because they were split from the same Pokemon, they were of equal power, they couldn't overcome each other, they just tired each other out and went into a deep slumber in the form of a stone, waiting for the day that a chosen hero would, basically show itself to them. And there was also a third legendary, technically, called Q-Rem, that's like the empty shell that was left behind from when they split, that I'll talk about later. Now, the main antagonists of this game are Team Plasma, and Team Plasma's motive, or what they want to do, is separate Pokemon from people. They see Pokemon as being enslaved by people, and people as truly evil beings, forcing Pokemon to battle each other and forced to do work for them. They see it as truly cruel, and their goal is to completely segregate everything. Yeah, basically. And the two main characters from Team Plasma are N and Getsus. Getsus over here in the bottom right is basically N's adopted dad, and over here is the dude with the cool looking hat. So Getsus is the one who started Team Plasma, and he found N in the forest when N was just a kid, and he became basically N's adopted dad. Now, N, he was raised until he was found by Getsus by Pokemon. So as far as I'm aware, he's the only person in main Pokemon games that is capable of talking to Pokemon, just like a regular conversation kind of thing, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Now, as he was growing up, Getsus only exposed N to all the bad cases of Pokemon interactions with people. All the times that they've been exploited and kind of just treated like trash and basically enslaved. And he basically wanted to condition N to be as radical as possible for Team Plasma, to be a figurehead. So N became the king of Team Plasma, essentially. Now, throughout the game, as you meet N several times, you only find out he's the king of Team Plasma on the third encounter, I believe. But he never really feels like an enemy. He feels like he's on your side when you're conversing with him. And he'll oftentimes talk to your Pokemon, and he'll be very surprised, your Pokemon are saying they actually like to be with you. This is not something that I've heard of before, because he's only been exposed to the awful cases. So by interacting with you, he begins to sway in his beliefs. He becomes a bit more on the fence. So to fulfill his dream of separating Pokemon and people, he pursues either Reshiram or Zekrom, depending on what version you're playing. And every other game, the main antagonists force the main legendary into control through machinery or stuff like that. In this game, Reshiram or Zekrom just recognizes him as a hero that they've been waiting for and joins him by will. He just the legendaries just join N because they want to. So to combat him, you need to seek out the other legendary, and you find the stone that it's asleep as in a museum. So you take that, put it in your backpack, because it doesn't wake up for you because you're not worthy or whatever. And then it's during the final showdown with N that it does finally wake up for you, want to battle you, and for you to catch it. So N just sits patiently for you to do that. You battle it, catch it. He heals your Pokemon, so it's a fair fight. So then you fight N, Reshiram versus Zekrom, and your Pokemon versus his. And after you defeat his team, he begins to feel more and more like he might be wrong about separating Pokemon and people, because he's been on the fence for a while. And then Getsus comes up and basically calls N a disgrace to the name Harmonia that he gave to N. And he basically reveals that he views N and Pokemon as nothing more than tools for him to see his dreams. The whole liberating Pokemon from people was just a lie that he created to rally up this organization to get world domination for himself. He wanted all Pokemon to be separated from people so that he could be the only person with Pokemon to basically conquer the world. So then the real final showdown happens against Getsus. You defeat him, he's taken away, and then N basically sets off on whatever dragon he has on a journey of self-discovery and to go across the land and stop suffering of Pokemon. And to put it one way, it's like he stops seeing the world in black and white, where that's the titles of the games. He stops seeing it in black and white in the sense that everything needs to be separated. He begins to see things more like working together is the way to go. And there's this quote by him on the right of, it's not by rejecting different ideas, but by accepting different ideas that the world creates a chemical reaction. This is truly the formula for changing the world. Now, people expected a third version, Gray, which would focus on the third legendary Q-Rem because, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. But no, we get sequels instead. We get Black 2 and White 2. So it wasn't really the expected enhanced third version, but it did focus on Kyurem. It's a sequel to Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, and it takes place 2 years later. So it's back to the Unova region. There's a new main character, like it's a new trainer, there's a new story, locations, music. And this time, Generation 1 to 4 Pokemon are actually obtainable throughout the main story. But yeah, Team Plasma's back, and this time they're just bad dudes that just want to take control of the world, basically. So Ghetsis has Kyurem, this legendary dragon of ice, and he starts freezing over the whole region, basically. And during this confrontation with you, first he tries to murder you. Attempted murder in Pokemon, it happened. When N comes rushing in on whichever dragon he had in the original games, he had received a warning from Reshiram or Zekrom saying that Kyurem was suffering, so he shows up to try to defeat Ghetsis, saying that he can't allow selfish humans to make Pokemon suffer. And because Kyurem was once one with Reshiram and Zekrom, because they were once all the same Pokemon, and because Kyurem is kind of an empty shell, it's capable to take in truth or ideals Reshiram or Zekrom to become something more. So whichever dragon N brought in, Kyurem is able to attack it and basically merge with it to become either Black Kyurem or White Kyurem. And surprisingly, it can't do both, so no one actually knows what the original full dragon looks like. Guess we'll never know. But
Yes,
yeah.
we will, maybe.
Maybe. But this game came out in 2012, so it's already been several years since then. But yeah, so then you have to defeat either Black Kyurem or White Kyurem. You do that, Kyurem escapes from Ghetsis' clutches, Reshiram or Zekrom goes back to N, Ghetsis is taken away, hopefully for good this time, and tells you to meet him on the top of Dragon Spiral Tower. So you go there, you talk to him, and he basically talks to you about all the knowledge that he's learned from Reshiram or Zekrom over these 2 years, how he reminds you of this trainer from the first game 2 years ago. And he basically entrusts Reshiram or Zekrom to you, and he says, I hope that this legendary being will teach you as much as it taught me.
And it actually talks to you and says that?
No, that's what N says.
Oh, that's Vince, okay.
But he can talk to Pokemon, so he could directly talk to the legendary. You can't, you just have to like pretend to know. So now there's Generation 6, so now we're at 721 Pokemon. It introduced 72 new Pokemon. So, first we have Pokemon X and Y. This came out in 2013, worldwide simultaneously. They do this with games from now on. It's no longer Japan first and everywhere else later. So, this was the first 3D Pokemon game. So you could see, whoa, it's 3D! So it's called X and Y, kind of based on like X, Y, and Z dimensions of, you know, a 3D model. So, yeah, it introduced a new type, which was Fairy type. This is Sylveon, the new Eevee type evolution for Fairy. Because Dragon types were kind of dominating the competitive world. They were very strong. They only had 2 weaknesses, which was other dragons and ice types. So Nintendo and Game Freak were like, they need another weakness, they're too strong. So they made Fairy types. This game took place in the Kalos region, which is based on France, like you can see the Eiffel Tower there. They introduced Mega Evolution to bring something new to some old Pokemon. You can see the Mega Evolutions of Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise here, where it's like a temporary form change that you can only do one of per battle. So if you Mega Evolve one of them during battle, it'll go back to normal afterwards.
Oh.
So the main legendaries of this game are Xerneas and Yveltal, and they're basically the gods of life and death. The main antagonists in this game are Team Flare. I didn't remember what their goal was, I needed to Google it. And what I found out is they basically want to destroy the world. I'm like, that can't be right. And I was looking into it, and that seems like it's it. So,
Well, that's so far-fetched.
yeah, so I think I remember why I didn't like X and Y is because the villains aren't that good. And then there's the story of AZ and the Pokemon War. So AZ is this really tall 10-foot guy over here. And so this game tells a story about a Pokemon War that happened 3,000 years ago, where this great war happened. There was this guy, AZ, that lived back then, and this Pokemon that he was friends with, Floette, had to go and fight in this war, and a few years later he found out that Floette had died. So he made this massive machine to try and bring Floette back, this machine that was capable of taking and giving life. So he took the lives of a lot of Pokemon in order to bring Floette back, and Floette was also granted eternal life. He as well, for some reason, I don't really know. But he was still very enraged at the world that had done that to him. So he basically ended the war by becoming a bringer of destruction and killing millions of Pokemon, which is actually what enabled Mega Evolution. All the Mega Stones and stuff like that, those are like a bunch of dead Pokemon from the machine, what it kind of did to a lot of them. So that's why Mega Evolution is possible. But yeah, so Floette, seeing this, left AZ And so AZ just kind of wandered the world for 3,000 years searching for Floette again. And it's at the very end of the game that he does reunite with Floette. Team Flare is trying to use this weapon from 2,000 years ago to destroy the world because they're crazy nut jobs. And you stop them, it's basically the same thing, go beat the bad guys. Now, fans were expecting a third enhanced version, Pokemon Z, like as usual, which would focus on the third legendary Zygarde, which is this legendary that's basically like a World Serpent. Now, Generation 2 and remakes already happened, to be able to catch them all. And that's possible now. So are Gen 3 remakes gonna happen? The answer is yes.
Oh, SpongeBob.
Yes. I'm playing Hoenn in 3D. I'm listening to trumpets in 3D. I'm surfing the ocean in 3D. Ow, I got stung by a tentacle in 3D.
Oh, there
Because
you
it was
go.
on the 3DS. And then there's the starters over there from Gen 3. Get and losers, we're going to have remakes. So here we have Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. That was awful, sorry.
Oh,
But yeah, so these were remakes of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. So this brought Mega Evolution. This brought Mega Evolution to these games, which wasn't in the original Ruby and Sapphire. It had a greater focus on the Eon duo, which is Latios and Latias. Like you catch one of them as part of the main story, and then you're able to ride around on its back around the region.
Ooh.
Like flying is a mechanic in the game. It's
yeah,
pretty
that's
cool.
how we're supposed to be catching. We're supposed to be catching.
So it's
Now some
Latias?
Latias?
Latias and Latios. The blue one's Latios, red one's Latias. And some expected that there might be a third version, which would be Delta Emerald. And Nintendo did actually trademark that name, so they were thinking about it, but instead they just include an epilogue to the game called the Delta episode, which focuses on Rayquaza, or Rayquaza, whatever. Now, the story of the main games is basically the same thing, but the Delta episode, it has to do with a meteor coming towards the Earth that could annihilate all life. There is this organization called the Devon Corporation that basically wants to shoot a laser at this meteor that would send it into another universe. And this girl that you meet, Zinnia, she says like, that'd be a good idea for our world, but that'd just be sending it to destroy some other world. And this is basically one big retcon to try and explain why Mega Evolution exists in these games and not in other games. She explains that there's multiple universes that are all just a little bit different, some majorly different, and explains that there's probably some universes out there where the war 3,000 years ago never happened, the Great Machine was never created, never fired, so Mega Evolution doesn't exist in some universes, but it does exist in these ones. Just like there's a Hoenn where Mega Evolution might never have existed. Yeah, the original Ruby and Sapphire. So it's explained by this. So the Pokemon Multiverse is a thing that exists. It's complicated. But you team up with Zinnia and you and her basically summon Rayquaza down to try to team up with it, convince it to be on your side, it agrees to help you. So you ride on Rayquaza's back into space to destroy the meteor and to take down Deoxys, this alien that's living inside the meteor. It's neat.
Cool. I hope we don't have to do that part.
No.
Now there's Super Mystery Dungeon that I'm running out of time here. The same-ish notes of PMD Explorers where it's a really mature story where you play as a Pokemon. I really like this game. The main antagonist is Dark Matter, who's trying to throw the planet into the sun, turn every Pokemon on the planet into stone, where their spirit is basically sent to this alternate world where they experience eternal suffering. This is still a Pokemon game.
Wow.
Sounds like
Yeah.
Adventures.
And Dark Matter over here has actually been, this specific image actually has been my phone background for almost 3 years ever since this game had come out. I really like this game. But moving on, I don't have time to talk about it right now. There's Pokken Tournament for it was originally an arcade Pokemon fighting game. You can see it over here, where like Pokemon have been fighting in this turn-based thing for so long, people were like, are we ever gonna get an actual Pokemon fighting game? And the answer is yes. So it was released as a Wii U game as well in 2016, and then they also released it for the Switch over here in 2017 with some updates for Generation 7. So I have that loaded up here. You can pass it around, feel free to press some buttons and see what happens. So it was kind of a unique fighting game in the sense that
Well, is there
Like-
one button that would blow this up? Because I'm liable to pick that one.
it would be the right buttons, not the left ones. But it was a unique fighting game in the sense that it has 2D and 3D fighting. You keep pressing the left buttons, it needs to be the right buttons.
Uh-oh.
Like in the sense that, like whenever someone deals enough damage to the other, it switches between 2D and 3D fighting. Like most games will either be just 2D or just 3D. So here's Field Phase, which is 3D, where you can move around in any directions, do enough damage, and then it switches to 2D, where you can just move back and forth and jump. So it's really cool. I've tried to get into it a bit myself, but everyone kicks my ass, so I'm not that good at it. It had a little bit of a plot. It had a main antagonist in the form of this dark, corrupted Mewtwo, Shadow Mewtwo. You can also play as in the game. And yeah, it was neat.
Pikachu's having a corner in that game.
Oh.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Pokemon Z a little bit. Now, the most interesting thing about Pokemon Z to me is the fact that it doesn't exist.
What? I like that one.
Now, the Game Freak, they just did 2 main series Pokemon games for Generation 6. That was X and Y, then Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And that was it. They're like, okay, we're moving straight to the next generation now. So every legendary trio of every other Pokemon games, the 3rd legendary has always gotten their own game. Like with Emerald, why did that take so long to think of? With Emerald version for Rayquaza, with Platinum version for Giratina, with Black 2 and White 2 for Kyurem. But Zygarde, he never gets a game of his own. You gotta feel bad for Zygarde, don't you? But before we move on to Generation 7, let's talk about a game that not that many people actually know about. So please raise your hand if you've ever heard of Pokemon Go.
I think I'm playing that.
Now, first of all, the first thing you'll notice is, unlike the other games, I have an exact date written down, like for some of the interesting stuff that comes there later. Because a lot of it is just later that month that this happens. I'm gonna skip a lot of this because I'm running out of time. But Nintendo began to branch out to more than just their own consoles. Like for a long time they felt like we can only make games for our own consoles, but then they started to feel like, okay, maybe it's alright if we actually make some mobile games. So it was first conceived in 2014 by Satoru Iwata. And yeah, it's a free-to-play mobile game bringing Pokemon to the real world that uses GPS maps. It's actually built off of another game made by Niantic called Ingress, where all the Pokestops that exist in Pokemon Go were these stops that were created. Yeah, it was what Ingress was. And it was just created by random people. So if you look up funny Pokestops names, it's actually some pretty wacky ones. But I'm gonna skip a lot of this. It was very highly praised for bringing people together. It was covered by many news outlets. When this game first came out, literally everyone and their mother knew about this game. Initially, only Gen 1 Pokemon were... Initially, only the Generation 1 Pokemon were available, but its mainstream popularity dwindled by the end of 2016. Like this image over here, for example, where it's like playing Pokemon Go in 2016, or it shows a big crowd of people. Or it shows playing Pokemon Go in 2017, where it's just one guy kind of there alone in the park. But yeah, a lot of people left the game because there wasn't enough new content fast enough. It felt very unfinished, like with basic mechanics like trading not being in the game, and still not being in the game for some reason. But now there is available up to Gen 3.
We know that part. They're trying. Jeez.
God, when did I kill this dude? I've been hitting him like crazy.
It's in training mode. It means he has infinite health and he never fights back.
That's right, because he keeps fighting. Oh, they're from the McDonald's guys. McDonald's, I didn't know any of them.
So now we move into Generation 7, which started in 2016. So now we're at 807 total Pokemon, and it introduced 86 new Pokemon.
Holy crackers.
So now we start out with Pokemon Sun and Moon that came out in 2016, and there's a lot to cover with these games. So this is in the Alola region, which is based on Hawaii, and it's these 4 islands that are over here. So the grid system is gone. So the grid system in previous Pokemon games means that you can only move up or down, left or right, and you kind of lock into place, where it's like you press up and it's like move up an invisible tile. That's gone in this game, so you can move any which direction, like diagonally. Mega Evolution is pretty ignored in this game. You only even unlock it after you clear the main game story, like it's not really a big mechanic of the game. Instead, what they introduced are called Z moves, which are really powerful moves that you can only use once per battle. Now, I don't have time for 8 gems. They added Alola forms, which for some Generation 1 Pokemon, they added a new form to like several of them. Like here's Alola Marowak, which I believe is a Ghost and Fire type, I think, instead of a Ground type. Or several Generation Pokemon.
What about the Executor with its head sticking up and in a dragon?
Yeah, that's Alolan Executor, and it's a dragon type for some reason.
So is that all the Executor?
Yeah, that's Alolan Executor.
So
where instead of being short and stubby, he's now like a really tall palm tree. And here's a couple joke images of it where it's like Harry Potter holding a little like Alolan Executor instead of his wand, or Kylo Ren from Star Wars with an Alolan Executor lightsaber thing. You know.
Wow.
But yeah, this game really changed up the formula. This was the first main game in the series that did not feature 8 gyms that you had to go and beat. Instead, it had this island challenge where you had to go around to these different trials and clear unique puzzles with each of them, and then fight a totem Pokemon at the end, which is just a really powerful wild Pokemon. And some of these puzzles were actually really fun and cool. But yeah, the main legendaries of this game were Solgaleo and Lunala, which are these legendary beings that represent like sunlight and moonlight, even though moonlight's just reflecting sunlight or whatever. So the main like bad guys of this game are called Team Skull. Now, I love these dudes because every other like main antagonists in Pokemon games, they're usually this evil organization where it's like, we want control, stuff like that. Team Skull, they're just a bunch of losers who failed the island challenge and want to ruin it for everyone else. That's it. They're just a bunch of people that got together and are like, this sucks, like, let's ruin it for everyone else, like. But yeah, one of the main characters of the game is Luzamine over here, who is the head of this place called the Ether Foundation, which is basically a Pokemon conservation site. Now, to sum her up really quickly, she's batshit crazy. Now, like, she obsesses with Pokemon. She needs to protect them all. She needs to kind of collect them all. She'll sometimes freeze some of them and put them on display in her office. That's how crazy she is. And there are these Pokemon in this game called Ultra Beasts, and what all that means is that they're basically from another universe. And when she learns about these Ultra Beasts, she's like, I must have them because I am batshit crazy lady. So she actually does get this Ultra Beast called Cosmog, which is this like cosmic puffball over here that's capable of opening these wormholes to the other kind of universes or dimensions or realities or whatever they are. And she wants to use Cosmog to open one of those to go and get a bunch of Ultra Beasts for herself. Now her daughter, Lily, learning about this, takes Cosmog and flees. And her son, Gladion, knowing about this, takes a science experiment that the Ether Foundation's been working on called Type Null, that's a Pokemon that's been genetically created to be a killer of Ultra Beasts. He takes that and flees. So, like, as the story goes on, Luzamine does eventually capture Lily and Cosmog again and forces Cosmog to open a wormhole, which leaves Cosmog kind of sick. And she goes through the wormhole, you have to chase after her, so you go to the Ultra of the Sun or Moon, depending on the game version, and you basically want to summon Solgaleo or Lunala, so you try to do that, and then Cosmog goes up and actually evolves into either Solgaleo or Lunala. It's the first game that actually featured a legendary evolving. Then it takes you to wherever Luzamine is, where she's surrounded by all these weird jellyfish alien things called Niheligos. You fight her as the final boss, and she's actually very difficult to defeat. And yeah, that's the end of that, basically. And people expected an enhanced third version, which would focus on the third legendary in the trio, which is called Necrozma. And we sort of got that, except it was 2 versions, which is Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Now, what's interesting about these games here is they are the last in the series of just handheld titles. Like, Pokemon has been handheld only for as long as it's existed for the main series. But they're moving on to the Switch now, which is a home console and a handheld. So Ultra Sun and Moon is actually the last time that Pokemon will ever be on something that's just a handheld. So the games are kind of wanting to go out with a bang with these. So yeah, it focuses on Necrozma, which is this dude over here. And a big mechanic that they added to this game is being able to go through these wormholes to go to different places. And because of this, through both games, they're able to actually capture every previous legendary in the series.
Oh.
Not mythicals though. Mythicals mean that they're event only, so like Mew and Celebi, for example. But every previous legendary that you can actually get in the game. So yeah, the game focuses heavily on Necrozma, who was a mystery in the previous games. And also I just have Ultra Moon here. You can feel free to like walk around and stuff. It's all grass, battle Pokemon. But yeah, you find out that Necrozma is actually from another world as well. Necrozma was from this civilization where he basically acted as the god of light that powered the civilization and provided light, but the people of that civilization got a bit too greedy and took too much power from Necrozma, and that kind of left Necrozma permanently crippled and in this kind of state where instead of being the god of light, he kind of relies on light to get by, he needs to like feed off of it. And so the story is about the same going up to the Ultra of the Sun or the Moon when you summon Solgaleo or Lunala, except in these games, after you do that, a wormhole opens up, Luzamine falls out of it, warns you about Necrozma. Necrozma comes out, attacks Solgaleo or Lunala, and then takes it over. So this is like the second case that this has happened in Pokemon games. So it's like with Black Kyurem and White Kyurem, where the two kind of merge together, where Necrozma kind of takes over Solgaleo or Lunala, feeds off their light. And it basically opens wormholes all across the region. Ultra Beasts feed into the region from all over. Then it goes to the place that it was originally from. You chase after it, and using the light of Solgaleo or Lunala, it's able to temporarily attain its original true form as the God of Light, which is this over here, or this, same thing, where it basically wants to do battle with you. You battle it, it is very difficult to defeat, it will consistently one-shot your Pokemon. And after you defeat it, they separate. Solgaleo or Lunala basically joins up with you, and Necrozma falls to another world, which you find out later is your world, and you can battle and catch it as well. And yeah, that's it for the main story. There's an epilogue afterwards that features Team Rainbow Rocket, they're called, where Team Rocket basically comes back and with all the main antagonists of all the previous Pokemon games. So Team Rainbow Rocket has Giovanni from the original Team Rocket, it has Archie and Maxie, the leaders of Team Aqua and Team Magma, it has Cyrus, the leader of Team Galactic, it has Gexis, who is like the real leader of Team Plasma, it has Lysander, the leader of Team Flare. And you defeat them one by one, and I haven't done this myself, but you somehow send them back to the worlds that they were originally from. And then after you defeat Giovanni, he's not sent back to the world that he's originally from. Instead, you just kind of see him watching over everything and asking himself, like, what world will I unleash my evils upon next? And then he teleports away and you never see him again. So somehow Giovanni got, like, dimensional teleportation powers from somewhere and was able to use them to gather up that Team Rainbow Rocket, and if we'll ever see him again in future Pokemon games, who knows? Now, what's the future of the series going to be like? There is currently a main series game in development for the Switch. We might find out what it is coming in June, actually, since there will be E3. They might reveal it there. So, will it be Diamond and Pearl remakes? Will it be Generation 8? Like, who knows? Now, I feel like there's potentially a Mystery Dungeon game in development for the Switch as well, because when the Pokemon director was talking about the Switch when it was first revealed, he was like, I think the Switch would be a good fit for Pokken Tournament and for Mystery Dungeon games. It's like, we've already seen Pokken Tournament, so Mystery Dungeon maybe? Like, will Pokemon Go get Generation 4? Will there be new unique spin-offs? Who knows? And then, very briefly, other stuff. This is the Multiverse, where it's basically, there's a timeline of the original games, there's a timeline of like the Game Boy Advance to the DS games, where Mega Evolution doesn't exist, the war 3,000 years ago never happened, the weapon was never created. The Mega Evolution timeline, where the war 3,000 years ago did happen, the weapon was fired, Mega Evolution's possible, and then a timeline for Ash, basically, in the TV show. And then the origin of the Pokemon universe. Arceus is, I know it's pronounced RKS, but I like Arceus. Arceus is generally considered to be the Pokemon god who created Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina as the gods of time, space, and antimatter. Created Uxie, Mesprit, Azelf to keep Dialga and Palkia in check, as well as being the beings of knowledge, emotion, and willpower. Created Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem as this one being as, I don't know, just a thing to exist, I guess. Xerneas and Yveltal as the beings of life and death. Zygarde as the world serpent. Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza as the beings of land, the ocean, and the sky. Created a bunch of Mews to go basically live on the land. They were plentiful ones. Mews contain the DNA of every Pokemon, so they kind of evolved into all the Pokemon from there. There might still be a few in existence, but that's why they're mythical, because no one ever sees them. And then as for Necrozma, Necrozma's from another universe, so I can't really say whether Necrozma was created by Arceus or not. I'd say probably not, considering it's from a completely different world, but it is generally considered to have once been at least the God of Light. And yeah. And then there's just other stuff I can talk about, as well as other questions. Like, ask anything, here's some other stuff that, like, if you want to know more about it, stuff that I can cover.
So Dittos are implied feral clones of Mews.
Yes. Ditto and Mew are the only Pokemon that can learn the move Transform. Like, Ditto is famous for knowing the move Transform, but what a lot of people don't actually know is Mew can use Transform as well. Now, Ditto and Mew, they're the same color. When they're shiny, they're also both the same color. They're both blue when they're shiny. Oh. They weigh the same weight, they have the same stat distributions. And you can only find Dittos in the original games in the Pokemon Mansion where Mewtwo was created, and in Cerulean Cave where Mewtwo lives. So yeah, they're probably fairly cool to me.
Why is there missing 157 Pokemon generation?
Missingno. That stands for missing number. There's a if you go and talk to this old man who basically gives you a Pokemon catching tutorial in the original games, and then you go and surf on this beach, you'll actually find this Pokemon called Missingno, which, as I said before, stands for missing number. And it's just like this glitchy mess. You can't even tell what it is. But this implies that this was a Pokemon that was once programmed into the game but was deleted at the last second. So it seems like there was originally intended to be 152 Pokemon for the original games, considering that you can find Missingno. What a lot of people theorize that it is that it's Kangaskhan's kid. And that Kangaskhan's kid could evolve into Cubone and then Marowak, because that all seems like it fit together. That's what most people think Missingno is. But Missingno could also be something like Ho, or something like that. Like, they didn't know about Ho back then. Ho was in the first episode of Pokemon. Like, there were originally 190 Pokemon that were created, they just saved a bunch for Generation 2, so Missingno could really be about anything that's in Gen 2 as far as we know. Or just something completely different. But most people think it's Kangaskhan's kid.
That's right. So I would definitely think that KFC. Hey, Pikachu, what's that?
That's a game for the Nintendo 64 where you had a microphone that you would plug into the Nintendo 64 and you would talk to Pikachu and tell it what to do. And it's very famous for not working that well and Pikachu not understanding the thing that you said.
Anyway, doesn't he?
But Pikachu will like bring you things, or Pikachu will have to do something, so you'll be like, Pikachu, go pick up the thing, or go pick up the apple. Pikachu, pick up the apple. Hey, Pikachu, and you just have to like yell at it constantly. Like, it's a kind of famous for being bad or for being weird kind of game. It's very weird.
So is 152 on the Pokedex for us? Is it actual different? Is it Missingno or is it something different?
It's not even on it.
No, it's Chikorita.
Chikorita. No, because we have a 152.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because over 800 Pokemon exist now. I'm just saying that in the original games
Yeah,
that only had 151, there was
Yeah.
secretly a 152.
Ah,
And shiny hunting, you know, they're not always the best.
That would be talking about shiny hunting in the main games. There's a few different methods of shiny hunting. They increased the shiny odds in more recent years to 1 in 4,096, so doubling the odds.
Even better if it's shiny day.
The shinies seem to be a lot more common in Pokemon Go than any of the main games, though. Like in the main games, it's 1 in 4,096 chance of it being shiny, but there are methods to increase the chance. Like in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I mentioned before how you can go through wormholes. Ugh, sorry. Where the further you go through these wormholes, the greater chance the Pokemon that you find of being shiny is. Where it's like a little mini game where you have to go through these speed boost things and avoid these little electric things that slow you down and not get sucked into any wormholes. And the further you go, the higher chance it has of being shiny. There's also other methods like the Mazuda method where you can breed two Pokemon together that are from different real life regions, and it means that there's a higher chance of it being shiny. I don't think it's a thing anymore, but there used to be fishing chaining where you could like fish on the same spot over and over again. There's SOS hunting where you like knock a Pokemon out over and over again while another one calls for help. Stuff like that. All increase shiny odds.
Yeah, no, this was very fun. I really appreciate it. I just was a mom that wanted to collect the cards. Not just that, you know, like I had girls. They didn't play the game, they just collected the cards. Because they would have to keep them there. I know, but I mean, two little girls just collected them because they're cute.
Now I have one more bit to the presentation here, and that's for Large Edmonton. Every year my Taekwondo school does a fundraiser for this organization that helps people with developmental disabilities. I can't
ITF or
speak today.
WTF?
And what, sorry?
Are you ITF or WTF?
WTF.
Okay.
Where?
What the?
Oh,
World Taekwondo Federation.
There's the International Taekwondo Federation
yes.
and there's the World Taekwondo Federation.
But yeah,
In the Olympics, it's the world.
But yeah, my Taekwondo school, the master of our dojo, Master Park, he believes very much in giving back to communities. And this breakathon event that we do once a year is one way that we do that, where we all raise as much money as we can for Large Edmonton. And the more money we raise, the more boards that we get to break just for fun. Every year that we do it, Large Edmonton actually comes to the dojang themselves. So this is Master Park here holding the boards for them to break as well and just have fun and a good time. And we present them with all the money that we've raised. So yeah, if anyone's willing to make a pledge, it'd be greatly appreciated. It helps this great organization.
You're going to send us your email so we can email trash people?
I just have like the kind of
I don't
sheet
have
thing
money
here.
on me, but
I can know who your mother is.
I can always email it to your mother.
And thanks for coming.
Wow, thank you.
So there is actually one more part to the presentation that I didn't get to because this information didn't actually exist at the time of the presentation. So the presentation happened just this past Friday, and this information just came out this Tuesday, just a few hours after I uploaded the completed video of the presentation. So I've already taken the video down. I'm going to upload it with this at the end. So what was just revealed today was a few very interesting things. The very first thing is a new game called Pokémon Quest. Now, Pokémon Quest, it's a Switch game, and it's going to be a mobile game later. It's going to come out at the end of June for mobile devices. But for the Switch, it just came out, like right after it was revealed. So I actually just finished my few-hour stream of Pokémon Quest doing like the first impressions and figuring it out. If you're interested, there should be a link to that video in the description. But like with Pokémon Quest, the idea of it is it being like accessible by anyone to be able to play. Like it's simple enough for anyone to get into. It's on this island where there's a bunch of cubed Pokemon basically, where you go on expeditions where they'll go around and attack other Pokemon automatically. You can just occasionally tell them what moves to do basically. So, and you can attach like badges or whatever the heck they're called to Pokemon to power them up and to kind of strategize your team. So it's simple enough for anyone to get into, but it has some depth that some other people will like. Now it is a freemium app, meaning that it's free to download, but like to progress majorly, one does have to shell out basically. Now, I found it to be a interesting game. It's kind of similar to Pokemon Rumble if anyone's familiar with that, except without you choosing where the Pokemon goes, and it's largely automatic where you have your Pokemon in teams of 3. Now, the big thing that they talked about was the Pokemon games coming out on the Switch, which are coming out this year, November 16th, this year, 2018, it was revealed. And the Pokemon games coming out on the Switch here were revealed as Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee editions. Now, these two titles, they're remakes of Pokemon Yellow version on the Game Boy, which came out in 1998 in Japan or 1999 in North America, as I covered previously in the presentation, where Yellow is based loosely on the anime where Pikachu's your partner, just like Pikachu is Ash's partner. Now in these games, depending on which version you get, it's Pikachu in Pikachu Edition, it's Eevee in the Eevee Edition. Now, the most interesting thing about these games is this accessibility and how simple it is. Now, these games, unlike regular Pokemon games where you need like all the buttons around the whole thing, these things you can play with just a single Joy-Con from the Switch. So you can move around with a stick, and then just, you only really need one button is the impression that I get when it comes to actually playing the game and selecting what you want to do. Now, that makes it really simple, just basic controls wise for anyone to go into, but it's called Pokemon Let's Go because it's very based on Pokemon Go. These games are like a mixture of a main series Pokemon game combined with Pokemon Go. So catching Pokemon is just like in Pokemon Go, where you walk up to them, you have Pokeballs to throw, and there's like the little circle that goes down where you have to throw it in time, you have to aim and such. Now, how you do that is with the Joy-Cons, where you can do like an overhand throw, you can do an underhand throw, you have to aim at the Pokemon. Now, probably the most interesting thing to me that was revealed about these games is 2-player co-op. You can have 2 people that are using 2 different Joy-Cons like this, playing together cooperatively on the same screen on the same console, where the second person comes in like as a supporter a supporting character that can move around the screen as well and interact and such. And when it comes to catching Pokemon, both of you can try to like aim Pokeballs at the Pokemon, and in battles it seems like you both send out a Pokemon, so you can both participate in the battle. Now, another really interesting mechanic that they brought back was Pokemon walking with you. That was something that was in HeartGold and SoulSilver, as I established earlier in the presentation, where Pokemon would walk behind you in those games so you could turn around, like interact with them, check in with how they're doing. And people have been asking for that back ever since. Like, it's very highly requested to be brought back, and it was actually kind of implied that it was meant to appear in Pokemon Sun and Moon, because data miners actually found that in the code of Pokemon Sun and Moon, there was a walking and running animation for every single Pokemon that existed. So, like, it's thought that they did intend to put Pokemon walking behind you in Sun and Moon, but because the 3DS already lagged enough running the game as is, like it's slowed down enough already, they've probably figured that having Pokemon walk behind you would make the game way too slow to even play, so it probably wasn't in those games. But now, in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee editions, it's now back in the game where Pokemon can walk behind you, in addition to your Pikachu being on your shoulder or your Eevee being on your head, which is really cute. Now, something that I really wonder is, like the original yellow version, will it be impossible to get your Pikachu to evolve? And then same for the Eevee as well, I guess. Will it be impossible to put them in a PC box for storage, or you're required to take them around with you? It seems like it heavily focuses on those two Pokemon, so I guess we'll have to find out. Now, something else that's really interesting with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee is its Pokemon Go compatibility. These games on the Switch will be able to connect to Pokemon Go on the phone. You can kind of see the reflection on my desktop video editing software there, but you can connect it to them, and you can trade Generation 1 Pokemon back and forth between Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee editions. That was something that really worries me. Is it just being Generation 1 Pokemon? Like, will you not be able to transfer your previous Pokemon from previous games to this game? Like, is it only Generation 1 Pokemon that are allowed? Because according to the website, you can only transfer Generation 1 Pokemon from Go to this game, and it's based in the Kanto region, so like, is there only gonna be Generation 1 Pokemon available? This is something that actually really worries me. That's my biggest worry for these games. Now, you can also send special gifts from like the main game to Pokemon Go. And something that they're adding as like something else that you can buy for the game is called the Pokeball Plus, which would look something like this plastic Pokeball that I have here, but like a bit smaller and like this electronic device, not this plastic thing that opens up. Now, the Pokemon Go Plus, kind of similar to HeartGold and SoulSilver, it's basically like the Pokewalker. They're basically bringing the Pokewalker back, where you can send your Pikachu or your Eevee onto the device itself or any other Pokemon that you've caught, and then you can go walking around with it, and you can like interact with the Pokeball. It has like LED lights around the outside there. You can interact with it in different ways without an actual screen. I'm not really sure how that's gonna work in the end. And it also works as a controller in the main games. So the center button of the Pokeball is going to be an analog stick, kind of like the Joy-Cons here, the stick there that you use to move around, where you can have that in the middle of the Pokeball, and I guess you just press the button down to like do a button. So you can play Pokemon on the TV screen like ahead of you, playing with a Pokeball in your hand. And when you go to catch Pokemon, you can like pretend to throw the Pokeball, try to throw it at different angles and such. And when the Pokemon goes into the Pokeball, you can like feel the real Pokeball vibrating in your hand and the lights flashing around the center there until it gets caught. Now, something else that's really intriguing about this Pokeball Plus is it also counts as Pokemon Go Plus. If anyone knows what Pokemon Go Plus is, it's like a little item that you could get that would connect to your phone with Bluetooth, where you could keep it in your pocket or you could put it on like a wristwatch kind of thing, where it'd basically be like playing Pokemon Go without pulling your phone out, where you'd feel a vibration on it, which would let you know that a Pokemon's near, and you could press a button on it to try to catch that Pokemon, and then it'd let you know if you caught it or not by vibrations. And this little Pokeball item that you can get as well will also count as a Pokemon Go Plus. So not only can you connect it to the Switch, but you can connect it to your phone as well to act as a Pokemon Go Plus, which is really interesting. I'll be very interested to try out this Pokeball Plus for myself. Now, the very last thing that they announced at this conference, which it was like a 45-minute presentation that they uploaded on YouTube. Part of my stream that I did was also covering that entire presentation as well as discussing it as I went through. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, that should be in the description as well, where I go through the whole presentation and basically discuss what's going on there. Now, the last thing that they revealed during the presentation was there's another Pokemon game in development for the Switch right now, and it's currently slated for a Q2 2019 release, and that's all they can tell us right now. They can't tell us any other information. Though, one note that they did make was that this game would be more in the style of Pokemon X or Y and Pokemon Sun and Moon, which implies that this game that's coming out on the Switch this year is like the weird mix of a main series game and Pokemon Go. Whereas the one next year will be the one that's like a real main series title, where, like, who knows, like I covered in the presentation, maybe it'll be Generation 8, maybe it'll be Generation 4 remakes, we'll see. But yeah, it does seem like next year we are getting like the true kind of core Pokemon RPG. But this year, we're getting a mix of Pokemon Go and a main series Pokemon game. Now, I find this really intriguing. Like, it's kind of following in the footsteps of Satoru Iwata, who, as I mentioned previously in the presentation, he was the president of Nintendo for several years. He invented the Wii, and something I forgot to mention during the presentation is he actually passed away in 2015 from bile duct cancer. But a quote from him that I'll repeat now from the presentation was that games are meant to be one thing: fun. Fun for everyone. That was like his motivation for creating the Wii. It was like simple motion controls that anyone could go into. Like, so many people own Wiis, and so many people are familiar with like Wii bowling, the kind of simple controls, stuff like that. Now, Satoru Iwata, Pokemon Go was his idea in 2014, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, where it's accessible, anyone can play it. Now, it seems to me that that's the same idea with Pokemon Go Eevee, or Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee editions, where it can be accessible by anyone. Now, Pokemon has always encouraged cooperation in the past, where there's two different versions and you have to like find someone with the other version to trade with them, and like have them trade you what you need, trade them what they need. Now, until Pokemon Go, you wouldn't exactly be walking around on the streets trying to find someone to trade with, obviously. Pokemon Go was the thing that really brought people together. Now, because Pokemon has always been about cooperation and bringing people together as long as it's existed, I genuinely believe that Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee editions, that's why they exist. That's why it's centered around Pokemon Go. It's following in the footsteps of Satoru Iwata, and it's kind of encouraging cooperation between more people than ever before, because it's a mix of something that is simple to understand, anyone can get into it, so simple, but still has some depth that other people, like the fans of previous Pokemon games, will enjoy as well. So this is like encouraging cooperation and increasing the group that is able to cooperate as much as they can to get like a new kind of player base. Now, the Switch is a lot more popular than the Wii U ever was. In the presentation, they revealed that the Switch just hit 17 million units sold in just over a year of being out, whereas the Wii U, Nintendo's last console, only sold 13.5 million in its entire lifetime. And a lot of people are picking up the Switches because of its simplicity. It's a home console and a handheld. There's cases like 1-2 Switch, which are actually pretty bad games, but they tried to bring in simple motion controls that anyone could play. It seems like they're trying to bring it back to the Wii era, when anyone can get into the console. And it feels like Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee edition is genuinely what this is meant to be. Is anyone can get into it and encourage cooperation. So, like, it's not going to be another Pokemon Go, because so many people own smartphones and not many people own Switches. Well, a lot of people own Switches, but it's not like everyone that you know, basically. So it's almost certainly not going to explode in the same way that Pokemon Go did. And I feel like a lot of people will be dissuaded from picking up this game because they're like, Pokemon Go, that game sucked, I want a real main core RPG game, which will actually be coming out next year. But at the same time, it'll bring in so many new people, like it might still make some news headlines. And with the path that this is setting out, the accessible by anyone path, it's going to be very interesting to see where this leads the Pokemon series in the future, and I'm very excited to see where it leads from here. Ever since the release of Pokemon Go, there's been such a greater emphasis on making games that anyone can get into and play, and this is going to completely change the series in one way or another, in my opinion. So I myself am very excited to see where this is going to turn the series. Will it take it in a completely new direction where anyone can get into it, or is it going to fail, and are they going to go back to the main kind of core series? And it seems like that's what they're trying out, where it's like, here's a new thing, and then next year here's the classic kind of thing. So I'm very excited to find out how it goes. I'm very excited to play these games, and we'll see what happens. So this has been a very long presentation, especially with this bit at the end. So I'd like to thank you all so much for watching again. This has been a heck of a ride. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.